So what we haven't talked about is you do give a lot of time back to the Guelph community, etc. And you do have a company that you've started, another one in Jake's Place, and your efforts there. I want you to talk a little bit about that because I think it gets to the core values of ag too, as far as that idea of always giving back.
Yeah, so a couple of things. My life and Julie's life has taken a turn, as most of us do. No one's life is a smooth highway. So our middle son Jake has autism, and we've become very involved in the autism community and also in advocating for Jake. So that kind of ran in parallel to what I was doing with my business, and at times it would intersect. And so it did bring me a little more into the idea of community service. But also, again, I don't want to, this is not a commercial for Kim McConnell, but early days when I met Kim, he told me something that stuck with me forever. He said, here in Western Canada, if you have any degree of success in business, it's not optional that you do community service, it's expected. And when I went to Calgary a few times, and we'd be at a hockey game, and there would be the mayor just hanging out with everyone, and then there'd be various, Tim would say, this person's on the board of the Y with me, and this person is doing this, and everyone had some connection to community service. So I think I both got dragged into it a little bit because advocating and trying to create community resources and capacity on the autism side. But it did stick with me that what Kim had said, that it if you've reached some measure of success, don't keep all your acorns under your own basket. Try and be a good citizen as well. So I do my best to do that. I'm also I'd say one of my core philosophies, if not my core philosophy, is karma. And that is what, I won't explain karma because I don't think I'm an expert on it, but it's the idea of a circle, and what you put in eventually comes out. And that's something that's helped me in some of my hard times when I've had things go against me or bad outcomes, or, but trying to be positive and trying to contribute. In my experience, it always does come around, sometimes really slowly. And even if it doesn't come around in a direct way, I have found the community service and the things I do outside of strictly the money making are just as rewarding or more rewarding than the things we do for money.
And I think you would probably agree, probably even more challenging because you're dealing with bureaucracy, different agencies and associations and all those things, where what we do on a day-to-day basis in marketing probably seems simple comparison to that.
Well, it is a different rhythm. So I've been on a couple of volunteer boards, and on the first one, I won't name names, but on the first one I was at, the chairman took me aside one time and said, Len, this isn't your boardroom. You can't beat on these people to get results. They're volunteers. They're giving up their time. So you got to slow your roll, buddy. So that was an early lesson, that it is a different rhythm. And a different set of people and expectations. But I would reiterate what Kim told me, that is for all of us, some form of community service. A, you will get something out of it, and B, it is incumbent on us to try and make our communities. I'm a local guy. I like doing things at a community level. Try and make the world a little better place outside of what we just do when it comes to business.
Awesome. Awesome. You already touched on, you're really good at when we talk, or when you're telling stories or anything, you kind of weave in your mentors and the people that you've looked up to within the stories. So this might be a little redundant, but is there anybody we've missed, or anybody you want to feature a little more as far as those people that have impacted your career along the way, inside the office or out?
Well, it's interesting. So I think your best friends are not necessarily people who tell you how great you are and what you want to hear. They're people that tell you what you need to hear at a point in time. So there's probably three people who changed my life, but not in a nice, sweet, friendly way. So the first was a friend of mine named Tom Pollard, who I had met in second year university, actually first year university. And Tom was a hardcore farm kid, and long story short, we ended up going to Western Canada. He had worked on a grain farm out there, and I was out there for a few weeks with him. And one night we got extremely inebriated and we had one of those truth moments. And he says, I don't understand how you can have grown up on a farm, gone to school, and not know a lot of things. Like, I was not great with machinery and a lot of things that a farm kid should have. And it was really hard to hear, but it was true, because at that point in my life, I was always someone who kind of stood back a little bit and watched and didn't plunge in. And that painful memory caused me to dig in, and actually helped me when I went to launch my business. The second guy was Tom Schmidt. So I'd worked for Cyanamid for 3 years. I put myself through school as a disc jockey, and so one Christmas I was hired to do the Cyanamid Christmas party. And afterwards, Tom got right in my face, and he was a scary character. And he said, Kahn, if you put half the effort into your job here at Cyanamid as you do in this DJing business, you're going to run the company someday. And 2 weeks later, I quit because I looked into my art and I said, I'm not prepared. This isn't my passion. I was like geeked up about being a DJ, and I put everything into it. And the third one was a guy named Jim Kelly, a classmate of mine. So my first 3 jobs were each 2 years in succession, and I'd always call Jim after and bitch about things. And after the third time, I think after I'd left Ginty's, he goes, Len, I've known you a long time. You've had 3 jobs. Every time you call me and you go on and on about your boss is an asshole and this and that. He said, do you ever think that maybe the asshole is the guy in the mirror when you get up every day? And again, it wasn't a nice moment, and it kind of set me back. And I realized the idea of personal accountability, right? It's easy to say it's Ginty, or it's this, or it's Tom at Cyanamid, and the world is unfair. And really, that was the moment where, I was going out on my own journey, and I stopped blaming and looking at others. I won't say I still don't do it from time to time, especially when it comes to the Leafs, as you know. But so those were 3 moments in time that it happened a long time ago. They still kind of burn in my memory. So there's mentorship. So definitely Kim McConnell, Ross Harvey. I wrote down some names here. I had 2 great teachers in grade 7 and 8, Dan Volman and Milton Somerville. Still remember them. Carl Melke was my supervisor when I did my master's. So lots of people that I would consider mentors, but those 3 people changed my life without really intending to do so, I don't think.
Yeah, no, good point. I think it all comes down to similar types of experience myself, but it's like the minute you go, why didn't you go, okay, how could I have controlled this?
Yeah.
What can I do differently next time? Right. It starts there. So that's
absolutely
awesome. You took that. So talk to me a little bit about, you won a little bit of an award here at CAMA in the fall. Talk to me about one, it gets back to your service question as well, but you have been heavily involved in CAMA over the years. Your feelings about why that might be important, and then talk about that experience of finally winning that award, culmination of just great things or things to come. It doesn't end anything, right? But talk a little bit about that.
Well, thank you very much for bringing that up. I was humbled and honored to receive it, mainly because it is a cumulative award. It's not a thing you did, and that's kind of who I am. I view myself more as a plugger than a superstar. So when I was working at Chase Econometrics, I went to a high-powered USDA conference one time, and one of the guys got up and he was like a 350-pound good old Texas boy with a hat. And it turns out he was, I forget what his position was, but he was pretty high up in the not Ministry of Agriculture. What do they call it down there? USDA, Department of Agriculture. And I can't do a great accent. I'll try anyway. And he'd say, well, boys, there's 2 kinds of men in the world. There's kings and kingmakers. I'm the best of the king makers. And that's always how I viewed myself. I was always more comfortable behind the scenes. I figured our job was to make our clients look good, help them make their bonuses, help them get promoted, that kind of thing. So winning the award was nice. I won't lie, Rhett, and say that, you know, those of us in this business, and if you're running a business, have zero ego. So if I was going to get any award, a lifetime achievement award was something that really touched me. So when I had started at Ginty's, I'd been there about a week. I was more introverted, I think, than I am now. And I got a call from Cheryl Sylvester. So I think she was working with Monsanto, or they had an agency, Stanton and Sylvester, asking me to be on the CAMA board. And I was just so honored and blown away. And so I've been a member of CAMA since then. I think the organization is important in one of my core beliefs is networking. And I mentioned that before. Really, I'd say almost every major win we've had, you know, on the business side has come through some connection that I had made somewhere along the line, right? So it's all networking. Uh, again, not to be Kim McConnell obsessive, but when we first got together in 2002, Kim had a leadership team, and he gave each of us a mandate. It was a request, but it was, you're going to do this. Take someone out to lunch once a month who you don't know, and I'll give you the credit card to do it. So it's, no, I can't take Red out, who my hockey buddy or whatever. It's got to be someone I don't know. And that's really the best thing that CAMA does. It helps us hang together as an industry. I give lots of kudos to Mary Thornley, who's been at the helm of CAMA for a long time. I'll say 15 years or so. I'm old enough to know CAMA's been on what I call life support at least twice, where it looked like it was going to go under or merge with NAMA. Excuse me, but it's persevered, and I'd say it's persevered for two reasons. One, Mary's leadership, but number two is I think the industry looked in the mirror collectively and realized there is a purpose to bringing people together. So I think that is one of the unique things about our industry. We do hang together, very competitive, but also willing to support one another.
No, and I can say it goes into everything you're talking about. I mean, I know we've run into each other over the course of the years. You actually offered me a job. I think that was contact 1.0.
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring up that awkward moment where you blew me off and you hated me so much you moved to the US and didn't come back for 15 years. We'll leave that one aside.
Well, we stayed in touch though. I always know I could reach out, and I would just randomly probably, and it's probably like 5 to 6 year stints, and just call up out of the blue. You'd take the call or return the call, and I'd have some silly question of something to ask. And so I'd call that mentorship. And no, you've been awesome. I think it's serendipitous kind of where we ended up here, just in crossing paths, etc. But all right. So Len, you've given me lots of great advice actually over the years, as we talked about. So what would you give advice to somebody just starting out in the industry now?
Well, I think first and foremost, something you and I share, Red, is we're both passionate about the agri-food industry. So I would encourage anyone who's thinking about this as a career path to seriously consider it and follow it up. It's become such a vast, interesting field. And I think what's happening now that the food part is getting closer to the ag part makes it all that more interesting and challenging. A couple of things that I've learned over the years are, so there's home run hitters and there's singles and doubles hitters, and home runs are sexier, but the industry, a lot of what our job is showing up and doing what you say you're going to do. And that's not, that's not rocket science, and it's not something that's out there, but it is a differentiating factor, right? Hard work still does matter. Accountability matters. And I think for me, responsiveness. So what I am finding that's ebbing a little bit from when I started is a little bit of a lack of accountability, frankly, that people, I've never seen, I've never been around, blowing through a deadline and not following up with it. So this is not, I hope it's not the grumpy old man talking, but I'd say, it's a great industry to work in, but it's not going to be an easy or a free ride. One of my favorite comics, social commentators, is Bill Maher, and it's one of his constant themes. And maybe it's our generation of parents who have made it.
Yep.
We've tried to, we're not only helicopter parents, he says we're bulldozer parents. We're trying to remove all the obstacles.
Yep.
And I think the advice I would give to people starting out is hard work, showing up, doing what you say you're going to do still counts for a lot. It's a wonderful industry to work in, and especially if you're willing to take a bit of that farm work ethic and bring it into your professional life, it goes a long way. So that's the grumpy old man speech.
No, I think you might have said the same thing in your earlier years too. But that farm work ethic, and who's kidding who? Both farm kids. It's not like you were happy getting out there at 6 o'clock or having to do the chores after while your buddies were playing, etc. But you did that, and then you still went and had fun. So
No, I was mad. So here's the deal. My parents really did instill a work ethic, and they had a great. I don't think I did a great job with this with my kids, but if I wanted something and I wanted goalie pads, they would always pay for half, and you pay for the other half. So if you're a 12-year-old kid or even a 16-year-old kid trying to find $800, they were 1600 at the time for those beautiful Cooper leather pads.
yeah,
So I was always working. So one of my jobs, my best job, was a pizza delivery guy for Mother's Pizza. And the best job because you got a car. I was 16 and tooling around in a Chevette. So we would close at 2, we'd go for coffee after 3, and I'd get home and there'd be a note on the table. Dad needs you to unload hay in the morning, 7 a.m. And no, I wasn't happy about it. I know in
yeah,
this interview I talk work ethic and this and
yep,
that, but you're right. On reflection, in my 30s, as I'm building a business and I've got 2 kids, there were definitely some tough times. Those are the muscles that you draw on. But no, I don't expect my kids were terribly happy when we told them they had to do X and Y. But going through some adversity, being forced to work through things, you build muscles that you end up needing and using later on in life.
no, perfectly said, perfectly said. So I know we've used our time here with you. Any final comments, although those were pretty good ones? And ultimately, we just thank you very much for this. I don't think this will be the last time we talk to you. We'll get a few of these going, but honored to have you as our guest here for the first inaugural Aggie Allstars, which you kind of helped co-create here in the last year.
Yep. No, I don't think I have any stunning words of wisdom other than, for the value of networking, the value of relationships. And you're right, Rhett. This idea came up. I don't even think we were having a beer or coffee. For all of us to keep using that creative side of our brain, find some time every day to look out the window, and I commend you for taking what was the germ of an idea and actually bringing it forward. That's the hardest point. All of us can talk about stuff, and then the actual doing is another thing. So look forward to seeing the series, not necessarily my episode, but I think it's going to be great. I think it's great that you're taking some time out of your busy day, and Contact is shining a bit of a light on our senior, what our experienced members.
Experience, yeah.
So I had the pleasure. So here's an example. I had heard about your dad forever, for 40 years. He's kind of a legend in the industry. Finally got to golf with him this summer, and there's a guy I could spend 6 hours with just listening and learning from his experiences. So
Yep.
I do think there's some value, and I'm looking forward to seeing what some of our other Aggie All-Stars have to say.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thanks very much.